What in the world is rubber mulch? If you're like me, you probably haven't heard very much at all about it, but it's popping up all over the place. Welcome to Green Time. I'm your host, Don Fitz. This episode we're going to be talking about, will rubber mulch make you safe or sorry? But before we get into the studio discussion, let's take a look at the movie, The Hazards of Rubber Mulch.
My name is Nancy Alderman, and I'm president of Environment and Human Health, Inc. It's a group of 9 physicians and public health professionals that look at where the environment is harming human health. One of the issues that we've been involved in the last 2 years is grinding up rubber tires into small pieces and either putting them on synthetic turf playgrounds where children play, or putting them even as garden mulch or as the bottom of playscapes. You will see in this very good playscape that we are on, you will see that this playscape has sand, which is what is healthy and economical as well, but it's also very healthy for children. But what is being pushed is ground up rubber tires, and actually the Obamas, who have just put in a playscape into the White House, if you go and look at that playscape, which is a beautiful playscape, they have rubber tire mulch underneath that playscape. Why is that a problem? It's a problem for many reasons. Number one, ground up rubber tires have lots of toxins in them. They have toxins that are skin and eye irritants. They have toxins that are actually carcinogenic. And they have toxins, they have too much zinc. It takes a lot of zinc to make a rubber tire. And so for plants, if you use it in your garden, you will find that you will actually stunt the growth of plants. Also, the groundwater will get contaminated from the toxins that are in the tires. But we're most concerned that the White House has put in this ground up, even though it's dyed green and it looks lovely, it is ground up rubber tires with all its toxins and all its problems. On top of that, the rubber tires, even if it's dyed, they get extremely hot. So they've been measured at 161 degrees when it's 90 degrees out. That's very difficult for children. Very, very difficult. And Washington is a very hot city. And so, of all places, they should not have ground up rubber tires in that playscape. And we hope that the Obamas will learn of this and remove those rubber tires and put down something as good as what they have here at this wonderful school playground, which is what they have, is just play sand, which is very healthy. Now, to talk a little bit about where these rubber tires are coming from, they're simply coming from cars. They're coming from used tires that are no longer good, taken off of cars and put in huge piles and then taken off to a plant where they are shredded in 3 different sizes. One size, very, very small for the infill of synthetic turf fields, and then another size for playscapes and another size for garden mulch. So all these are, no matter what color they dye them or no matter what they call them, these are ground up rubber tires with all their problems. Now, tires have for years have been a hazardous waste in most states. Some states, they are a special waste. But regardless of whether they are categorized as a special waste or a hazardous waste, you need a permit to get rid of them because of all their inherent problems. Well, one can be amazed, and you can imagine how pleased industry is from taking what costs them a lot of money to dispose of. Now they're grinding them up and making a tremendous amount of money, but at whose expense? children's expense, and for some who are unknowingly spreading it in their gardens, at the soil's expense, because they contaminate soil and have the potential for contaminating groundwater, which is, a serious, serious problem. So anyway, it is good to look at, cars and think about how many tires in this country do we dispose of every year. It's millions. And all of a sudden, to turn that liability into a profit-making industry for these companies, the profit margin or the profit incentive is very, very large, and it's pushing this entire industry along. As well, EPA is sort of our government agency in charge of rubber tires and how to dispose of them, and so for them, it's a way out as well. And so we really, really need to look at this as a country, and if it could get into the Obama's backyard that cares so much about their children and their children's health, look where it can go. Look where it can go. And I think that's it.
What if we were served a side of truth?
I'll take a super bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich.
Okay, that'll be meat from a pig who can't even turn around, an egg from a bird kept in a cage so small she can't spread her wings, and the milk of a cow whose calf is taken at birth to make veal. Ma'am?
Since 1990, the Gateway Green Alliance has worked on environmental and social justice campaigns in St. Louis.
The Gateway Greens have brought dedicated activists to speak at Black and Green Wednesday programs, the annual Pesto Feast, Martin Luther King Day, May Day, and Kwanzaa celebrations.
The Gateway Green Alliance is best known for opposing genetically contaminated foods. We invite activists and scholars from around the world to participate in safe food action and bring their creative art.
We need your support to keep going. Please send your $60 membership check or your $30 low-income check. Best of all, come to a Black and Green Wednesday program, 7:30 p.m. on the first Wednesday of the month at Legacy Books and Cafe.
Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. We just saw the movie The Hazards of Rubber Mulch. I'm the host of Green Time, and with this episode I have two guests who have dealt a lot with issues of toxins, and I think both of them that's relatively new to the idea of rubber mulch. I have Donna Jones, who is an elected member of the St. Louis School Board. Donna, it's great to have you on.
Great to be on.
Okay, and I have Rachel Slaughter, who is a University City neighbor of mine in the University Heights neighborhood. Rachel, it's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
And let me ask you, was the first time that you heard of rubber mulch a year ago when we?
No, well, I've known about rubber mulch because I have two young children, so we frequent local playgrounds, and rubber mulch is becoming ubiquitous there.
It's everywhere.
Rubber surfaces and rubber mulch. So.
Yeah, and what did y'all think about the movie that we just saw about rubber mulch?
Well, I thought the movie was very, very good, and the lady got straight to the point when she talked about actually the Obama administration knowing about the hazards of rubber, and still they went on and installed a playground that had tires, and they had ground up tires as a cushion for the children. And that's interesting that right in Washington, D.C., this would be the location of a place where we have mulch, rubber mulch.
And no, it is astounding that we're getting a model which is not really the most positive model.
Well, we would think that would be where all the experts are located, so I wouldn't have expected to see that in Washington, D.C.
Well, and I think part of the reason it's there is because, and this is downplayed in the film a bit, it's because the EPA is actually recommending that people use rubber mulch. Yes. And use rubber surfaces in local playgrounds. So the Obamas are following naturally the EPA recommendation, but it's a problematic recommendation. It's a recommendation that serves the purposes of the EPA in terms of getting rid of this huge liability, which is 290 million scrap tires that we generate.
Huge number.
But so the EPA is actually driving this trend by highly recommending that people use this
right.
surface.
And the EPA, of course, the Environmental Protection Agency, that they were pushed by industry to do this, weren't they? Because the industry had a hard time. I mean, what do you do with a tire? You find them if you go boating in Missouri, you find them at the bottom of the rivers and the streams. If you drive around the city of St. Louis, you find them thrown in alleyways. I mean, what do you do with a tire?
Right, so they recommend multiple applications, and this is one of the most popular in playgrounds, but it also appears in turf, athletic turf, gardens, other places like that.
Okay, now Donna, tell me, you've worked as an elected member of the St. Louis School Board, and you are familiar with health issues for the city of St. Louis. What sort of health issues have you worked on?
Well, I was a lead inspector for the city of St. Louis, and I would go into homes and I would bring a clean team in, and we would try to eradicate some of the lead hazards that we found in homes, as well as asbestos. But there is a serious lead issue here in the city of St. Louis as well, especially with the older playground equipment, with the homes that are painted with lead, with the window sills and what have you. So we do have a lot of children over the age of 6 that are lead poisoned, and they're not being addressed. And they're coming to school and they are exhibiting behaviors of a child that has toxins in their body.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize this about lead, that lead is, while the major dangers that people hear about is that it causes kidney damage, it can cause all sorts of organ system damage, but it also causes behavior problems in children.
Yes, it does. There was a study done several years ago of prisoners, and they found that a large portion of the population there lived in homes that were built before 1978, and that was the time frame that they stopped using lead paint. But many of those people were exhibiting the same type of behaviors that people who have lead were exhibiting, and they were violent, and they were not thinking out their situations. So we have a lot of children in school right now. One of the most serious problems in St. Louis public schools is reading. We have a lot of children that are having problems concentrating.
Right, and that could be from lead or
absolutely,
or any other from a lot of toxins. And have you worked on any other issues concerning toxins besides lead?
Well, asbestos and
okay.
lead were the major important issues to me, because it's just something so simple that people totally ignore it. And we had a lot of children in St. Louis public schools who were exhibiting behaviors that really concerned me, especially as a parent. So that's why I focused in on lead and asbestos.
Okay. Now Rachel, you've read about, I'm trying to get to the point that rubber tires are part of a whole series of toxins that children and adults are exposed to. You've looked at other toxins besides rubber before you got interested in rubber mulch, haven't you?
Well, to some extent. I was also interested in lead as you were. Lead is not necessarily a major component of rubber tires, but it does occur in rubber tires, and it can be a major component of rubber tires. Rubber tires contain 49 chemicals, many which are hazardous and carcinogenic. Lead is one. Okay.
And then zinc's one of the major ones, right?
Zinc's one of the major. Mount Sinai Pediatric Environmental Health Unit actually wrote a recommendation to discontinue using these surfaces, and lead was one of the toxins that they wrote about, saying that lead was recently found in synthetic turf fields in New Jersey at levels so high that several fields were closed by the state health department. And they also talk about the other more prominent toxins in tires, such as styrene, butadiene. These are principal ingredients of synthetic rubber tires that are known carcinogens.
And these are all synthetic substances
That's right.
created by humans, and generally there's two big categories of toxins you find. One is the heavy metals, the naturally occurring substances like lead, and the other is that ones that people have created, usually by refining petroleum or oil. Not always, but usually it's a petroleum byproduct.
Okay.
And so and these are some of the ones that were not naturally occurring, but you find in all sorts of things like tires, and they'll leach them out, and they'll get into the system. Now, what were you telling us about when did you first hear about rubber mulch? Because I thought when we were trying to stop that in our neighborhood association in 2013, and you educated me about rubber mulch, I got the impression that you had just heard about it, but you'd known about it before?
Well, I had only started doing research on it around that date, but I had seen it multiple times before, and from my first encounter with rubber mulch, I was concerned about it because of the smell it emits.
It's not odorless like it says in the ads?
It's not odorless.
No, it's not odorless.
Well, if you Google rubber mulch, if you just go to the computer and Google rubber mulch, you'll probably find multiple ads that say you can buy it from us, and it's a colorless, it's an odorless substance that is completely safe, and it has no harm to pets or to children, and it's great for the garden. And when I was reading about that, I was just amazed. I mean, it seemed like people could just say anything if they're on the web, didn't it?
Yes, it's surprising. If you dig a little bit deeper, you turn up some pretty alarming studies.
Okay, well let's take a break, and then we'll come back, look at a couple of announcements, and come back and finish our discussion about dangers of rubber mulch.
Okay.
The Sierra Club is the largest and most influential grassroots environmental organization in the United States. If you care about clean air, clean water, and preserving open space, join the Sierra Club. In Missouri, the Sierra Club's projects include promoting energy efficiency and clean power sources like wind and solar, cleaning up air pollution by retiring dirty, outdated, coal-fired power plants, protecting Missouri's parks like the Ozark National Scenic Riverways. We need you to get more involved. To join the Sierra Club, make a donation, or to find out about Sierra Club events in your area, visit our website at www.missouri.sierraclub.org or call us at 314-644-1011.
We are the Junior Black Chamber of Commerce, an organization that's creating the business leaders of tomorrow. Catch our new television series, Harambe 101, on Green Time TV. We want to thank all the business professionals who gave up their time mentoring what promises to be the next generation of movers and shakers. You too can help save the future of our underserved communities by supporting the Junior Black Chamber of Commerce with your charitable contributions. And remember, what you give today will help make a brighter future tomorrow.
Send your donations to the JBCC at P.O. Box 35257, St. Louis, Missouri 63135.
Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. This episode we are talking about, will rubber mulch make you safe or sorry? And with me I have a couple of guests who have thought a lot about this. I have Rachel Slaughter, who's a University City resident. I also have Donna Jones, who is an elected member of the St. Louis City School Board. Okay, just before we had that break, Rachel, you were telling us some about the toxicity of rubber mulch and how you would become concerned about it.
So I initially became concerned by smelling it, just standing on the playground and being kind of overwhelmed by the very chemical smell of it. I came home and did some research and found on the EPA website, I don't think it's there any longer, but they had the list of 49 chemicals that are in these rubber surfaces. That doesn't necessarily mean it's dangerous. These chemicals could be inert, but from the studies that I read, after looking at the EPA website, I discovered that these chemicals don't seem to be inert. The most important thing to know is just that these surfaces have not been studied. They haven't been sampled, they haven't been studied, they haven't been researched enough. We just don't know much about them. We know that they contain these chemicals. We know that they are ground up tires and nothing specifically engineered for children's playgrounds.
With the major motivation being to allow tire companies a way to get rid of tires.
That's right. The major motivation for the EPA is waste disposal. So these tires are being disposed of on playgrounds, and they are not being studied or researched to the extent that they need to be.
So we can't say for definitely that they're highly toxic, but we could say they're definitely highly suspect.
We can say they're highly suspect. And there are a lot of, the studies that are there, which are scarce, admittedly, raise serious concerns.
Right, and one of the things that, Donna, that I was thinking about while Rachel was talking was that if you have asbestos in a school and it's wrapped up tight,
yes,
then it's not going to harm anyone.
That's correct.
But if you go messing with the school and you spread the asbestos around.
Absolutely.
And I remember I read about one child being lead poisoned in a St. Louis City school because the lead, which is encapsulated with layers and layers of paint, somebody drilled through to install computer equipment and just left the paint dust on the floor.
Absolutely.
And so that paint that was there from decades ago, maybe 50, 60, 80 years ago, right, which had lead in it. And so rubber, it just seems to me that a tire, if you have the tire built and sealed, that the toxins are going to stay inside of it. But when you slice it...
No, absolutely not. My concern was, after doing some research on rubber mulch, is that once you put it down and the water starts to flow through the rubber mulch, it contaminates the vegetable life around it. Right. And if you have a garden, it will ruin the soil around the garden. It destroys the microbes. It destroys many species of plants that are vital to our ecosystem. So even if you pull the rubber mulch up, you will still have contaminated soil.
Because of the water leaching.
And then the vegetables will be ruined. And if you eat that, then you're also damaging your own body.
Right, and one of the points you made I thought was very, very important, and that is it can damage soil microbes. So yes, a lot of people think, well then, you put something down, you find out that it's bad, you pull it up, but your soil might be not as alive as it was before because there's a whole ecosystem underneath the ground that we often don't even think of.
Right, that was one of the articles that I read. It talked about how the soil would cause plants to become root bound, and it destroys their ability to aerate for the worms to come up through the soil and just give life and nutrients. So it just kills all of that. Right. And that was really troublesome. And then I was thinking, when my son, he plays football as well as a lot of his friends, and you would think, I was kind of excited one day when they went out and they were playing football on this on the turf surface. And I was thinking, now look at these cleats. These cleats are causing this surface to kind of start coming apart. So the kids are landing on this and they're inhaling those fumes from that surface as well. So that would do harm to those kids over a long period of time. So that's exposure, as well as football players, grown men.
And one of the things I don't think we've mentioned, Rachel, is the heat. What does rubber mulch and tires have to do with heat?
So, well, rubber mulch and rubber surfaces, in some cases, have are considered in some places burn hazards. So the New York Times actually had an article about the number of children seen in ERs because of the burns that they received on these surfaces.
They go to the emergency room because of they get burned from the surface.
Right. So it can, and I think the film said that it can reach a temperature of up to 160 degrees, and that's another thing that studies don't take into account the VOCs that are emitted from the surface at such high temperatures. So the smell is stronger at a much higher temperature. And living in St. Louis, we know that the temperatures get very high in the summer.
We could have a summer that's not so bad, or we could have a summer where it gets up to 105 or 110.
That's right.
And then if a child is playing in a playground that has wood mulch or play sand, it's not going to get that hot. But if the child is playing on a surface which is rubber mulch, that child could be in a situation where it's very, very hot.
Right.
Tell me, Donna, what have your experiences been working with the city of St. Louis and trying to alert people to toxins? Have you found people to be very responsive?
People are very responsive. They want more information, but I don't find that there is a concentrated effort to get that information out to people right now. The people just are not aware, but they do want to know. They come out and they're excited. If I hold a class, like I held classes and talked about lead and talked to the children as well as adults, and they were excited and they wanted to know how to protect themselves. So,
have you found that people who you work with know anything about the dangers of rubber mulch?
No, they don't.
And so this is something that we might need to do some.
Absolutely, I agree.
To do some work. Okay, Rachel, could you briefly tell us what happened in 2013 in University City with rubber mulch?
Sure. So our local park, our neighborhood abuts Lewis Park, and it was slated for renovation. When I looked at the plans, I noticed that there was a proposal to use rubber mulch and rubber surfacing, which was not a surprise because
it's used everywhere else.
It's used everywhere. It's become just pervasive. So I sent a note to the board of our neighborhood, and we're lucky to have a very involved group of neighbors, a board, and trustees who are interested in promoting the health and well-being of the neighborhood. So we all met, we did some literature reviews on our own, and then we were able to have a community meeting with the Parks Commission, and they actually listened to all of our statements, and we had about 10 speakers or so.
Yeah, 10 or 12 people, and everybody spoke against the rubber mulch.
Right, we didn't have any advocates for it. So we had environmental engineers, parents, a whole range of different types of people speaking.
And so if people wanted to get in touch, they could contact us through the number on the screen or the email address for Green Time TV, and we could put them in touch with some of the people who spoke about that. So there is an opportunity for people throughout the St. Louis area, if they watch the show and they're concerned about it, and they do not want rubber mulch to go into a neighborhood, they could do something. Okay, I want to thank Donna Jones, who is with the elected St. Louis School Board, for coming to this episode of Green Time. I want to thank Rachel, both of the work that you did in 2013 of alerting the neighborhood where I live to the dangers of rubber mulch. And I want to thank you for all the information that you shared with us. I want to thank people for tuning into Green Time, and I hope you tune in to us the same time next week.